And we looks like we are going live. Hello, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Um, Following up on my Halloween stuff. Gonna go through some of my Midnight movies collection. We'll start. I've got a couple VHS. The Midnight movies collection actually started around 2000. Mostly MGM, 20th Century Fox. They bought out some of the smaller labels from the 60s through the 80s. American International in particular, a lot of Roger Corman productions and Mr. Zorkoff, I believe. But they cranked out quite a few for a while, and I've got probably about 3/4 of them. So titles like High School Hellcats from the 60s, which is actually directed by Edward Burns, who got famous actually directing Three Stooges. That's where he started. And Thunder Alley, another one. Some of these never made it to DVD. Some have actually made it to Blu-ray now. We'll talk about that later. But there's a couple of those, the cassettes. Most of what I have is DVD, and they had several categories. Not all of them are horror. We'll start with some of the other ones, and we'll go through it. But they did several, and there you'll notice the logo at the top has skull and crossbones on here. They did several old pirate movies that they drug out and put out on DVD. Captain Blood and Captain Pirate. There's probably about 70 films in the whole collection, I guess. Like I said, I've got quite a few. There's a few I'm still trying to dig up. Crystalline and The Boy and the Pirates. Again, I think there were like 3 or 4 in the Pirate series. Not many. Then there were a couple of what I would call kind of hippie movies, I guess is the best way to describe them. Some of the biker type films, like The Wild Angels, a Peter Fonda biker film. There were a couple of those that were put out, and a lot of them were doubles or double features. Wild in the Streets and Gas, both very much anti-establishment. A lot of these were produced by American International and Roger Corman, and a lot of actually better-known directors got their start on some of these films. And Gas actually has Country Joe and the Fish in it. Another one here is Psych Out and The Trip. The Trip has was written by Jack Nicholson and actually has Bruce Dern and Dennis Hopper in it. And I think it predates Easy Rider. In some of the hippie movies. And then there's a lot of the beach movies are in there as well. A lot of the Nat Funicello beach movies are in this series as well. Again, like Muscle Beach Ski Party, Beach Blanket Bingo, Beach Party and Bikini Beach. And then similar to the beach films, but more of a racing, Fireball and Thunder Alley. And this is a notorious film with Vincent Price, Dr. Goldfoot, and the Bikini Machine. A lot of the Mike Myers spy movies took a lot from this. This was kind of one of the earliest first spoofs of the spy genre. And it's pretty ridiculous, actually. And there's a lot of, call them the creature features. A lot of them actually had ties to the Cold War and the way people felt about it, and it was retold through science fiction. But there's a couple books on that. Gorilla at Large, Monster Island. Again, some of these are a little bit older. And then Invasion of the Bee-Girls and the Star Creatures. Very much drive-in genre, quite a bit there. Two of my favorites here, The Two-Headed Transplant and the Thing with Two Heads. Thing with Two Heads had Rosie Greer, Samuel L. Zarkoff. produced a lot of these films as well. And Bruce Dern is on in one of these as well, along with Pat Priest and Casey Kasem. Pat Priest, of course, from the Munsters, was in the Two-Headed Transplant. Both kind of interesting that the same sort of theme showed up about that time. And then there's Attack of the Puppet People and Village of the Giants. Both were themed along people shrinking people. This one had Ron Howard in an early film, and said kind of a sci-fi shrinking people idea behind both of these. And then these are definitely Cold War related films here to some degree. Panic at Year Zero, that was after nuclear war apocalypse film, and it's not a lot of action. I've watched that one. Not a lot of action. The Last Man on Earth is actually the same film. Is a cleverly disguised vampire movie, and it is actually the first telling of the movie went on to become Omega Man, and then Will Smith did his version of it as well. And get into a couple more of the sci-fi gear. I Bury the Living, older film with Theodore Bickle, who went on to Fiddler on the Roof, I believe, and Richard Boone was in this one. Again, a lot of the American International films. Some of them had loose affiliation with the Hammer films. These were just more sci-fi cheese here going on. The Beast Within, The Bat People, Man from Planet X. Ray Milland was in quite a few of these. Let's see. And then there's a few later, like 80s films here. Morons from Outer Space. This has some ties to a lot of English actors here. And it's not bad. It's just a product of its time. And there's Strange Invaders. And I believe Toby Hop made a remake of this. I'll have to look into that. The Angry Red Planet, classic sci-fi from the 60s. Again, a lot of these films, X, the Man with X-Ray Eyes, again, had sci-fi ties, Cold War undertones, and some of them been remade into more recent films. Donovan's Brain had Nancy Davis before, of course, related to the president there. This again was a later one. Model Kathy Ireland was trying to break into films, and Alien from LA. This one I've seen quite a few times. Killer Clowns from Outer Space as the principal from the John Belushi film, and he is helping hunt the killer clowns. And of course, you know how you kill a killer clown. You have to shoot him in the nose. Mars Needs Women with Tommy Kirk. And then they made some of these 4 movie collections as well later on. Again, most of these are out of print now. They're a little harder to find, but so you can pick up several of the films. And Invisible Invaders, Seventh Planet. It's actually a pretty entertaining collection of films. Yeah. Oh. And then there's the more H.G. Wells type ideals, At the Earth's Core, starring Doug McClure. Those of you who watch The Simpsons, they actor, Doug, I believe they even call him Doug McClure. That's who he was modeled over. He was a 70s actor who did a lot of these implausible Jurassic. This was actually kind of a Jurassic Park film of the time. Vincent Price, Tab Hunter, definitely a heartthrob of the 60s, doing War Gods of the Deep. And then Joan Collins in an early film before she went on to drama and TV, doing Empire of the Ants. Of course, the giant ants climbing up the buildings, eating people. More giant reptiles here. We got Reptilius. And a double feature of Empire of the Ants and John Huston in Tentacles. John Huston, famous actor in a lot of great films, but also did a lot of schlocky films in the 60s. Phantom had won 10,000 Leagues and Beast with 1,000 Eyes. Getting more of the drive-in schlock of the 70s here, or the late 60s, early 70s. The Monster that Challenged the World and It. A lot of these have at least the trailer. Some of them have some commentary on some of the more famous ones. Younger and Konga, which was kind of trying to tie into the King Kong thing later on, but had some nice stop action. And then back to the Doug McClure. The Land That Time Forgot and The People That Time Forgot, both classic films on, again, basically a Jurassic Park, except more on the King Kong sort of thing, where they found the island full of the giant creatures that they had to fight and not be eaten by. Strange Invaders again, and then this is more of a sci-fi space one. Toby Hooper directed the other one, Invaders from Mars, which was kind of his remake of Strange Invaders. And that, of course, is the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Was trying to get into the science fiction vein. All right. Let's see what else we have going on there. Ugh. So there were quite a few of these. Now, and then there's quite a few that were issued on, at one time were on the mark with the Midnight movies, like on at the top there, Midnight movies. There were quite a few of them that had that on them, but then there were quite a few that were on VHS. When they did the reissues, they never made it to that trademark, but they were just good films and kind of in the vein, so they probably should have been in there. Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2, classic 80s. Frogs, one of my favorite ones, because apparently people are terrified of frogs jumping around and they can't walk away from them. The frogs just slowly eat them. Night Stalker and Night Strangler. This was the prelude before they did the series. Did 2 made-for-TV movies, I believe. And, of course, that is the dad from Christmas Story. Another King Kong type thing, Konga. A lot of American international films, and a lot of that was put together by Roger Corman. Bucket of Blood. This one shows up in public domain. Again, it's pretty much your basic 60s horror. And Poltergeist 1 and 2, again, kind of has the double feature in that. They just didn't put the Midnight. I'm not sure why. Guess they had some issue with that. Troll 1 and 2. If you ever get a chance, make sure and watch Troll 2. It has nothing to do with Troll 1. And it is one of the most bizarre, unwatchable films you'll ever watch, but quite entertaining. I actually have on Blu-ray as well, but Troll 2 is just something everyone should experience at some point in your life. I'll post the trailer afterwards on this. And here's a couple that were, again, some of them were on VHS in this series but didn't get out. Time Travelers and Beyond the Time Barrier were, but they put out these 4 sci-fi classics. Don't have the Midnight movie, but they're all films that were from that series. And there's a couple more there. Neanderthal, The Brain Wouldn't Die. Some of them are in public domain as well, but this series seems to have the better version of most of them. And getting into some of the better films here. And then we'll talk about the last series here shortly. This is a nice box set, and we've seen several of them. They put out several box sets like this, kind of putting themes together, trying to promote these. Again, Conga and Yungaria. This theme was all monsters. Monster Island and Gorilla at Large. Food of the Gods. This is in public domain, and there's a couple versions of it. And this one is famous for having German shepherds dressed as rats digging through the door to kill people. I've seen this one as well. Beast of 1,000 Eyes and Phantom of 10,000 Leagues. Don't know about this Chosen Survivors, but The Earth Died Screaming. I believe that is the movie title that Tom Waits used when he made his song about The Earth Died Screaming. Your basic sci-fi film. And then we're getting to some of the more creepier 70s drive-in movies. The Attic and Crawl Space. The Attic, some of these borderline on early slasher films here. Deranged and Motel Hell, both classics there. And then some of these were kind of tied in with the Hammer films. They had American International kind of worked with Hammer at some point in the 70s. Count Yorga the Vampire. There was also Count Yorga Returns. Again, American International did a distribution deal with a lot of people that were working at Hammer. Some say Hammer on the title, some don't. Devil of Darkness and Witchcraft. Pretty much your 70s Hammer-looking vampire films there, or vampirus. Countess Dracula and Vampire Lovers. The Return of Dracula and the Vampire. English horror here, Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horrors, one of which I believe stars Tom Baker of Doctor Who fame. And Joan Collins shows up again. Peter Cushing, yeah. I get a lot of English actors in that one. A couple Boris Karloff, Voodoo Island, and Four Skulls of Jonathan Drake. Again, some of these sort of tied into the Poe series, but they're close, but not quite there. Shelley Winters was a staple of a lot of these films in the 70s. Who Slew Auntie Roo and What's the Matter with Helen. She was very good at going over the top. Die Monster Die and Dumb Witch Horror, both very good films actually for their time. Some interesting tidbits on this one. The Dumb Witch Horror has Sandra Dee, whose star had kind of fallen, and she actually did a nude scene for this after being the good girl in the beach movies in the 60s, but she was in this horror film and did a semi-nude scene here. And Die Monster Die, actually based on a H.P. Lovecraft story. Oblong Box and Scream and Scream Again. Vincent Price. We're getting into the Vincent Price films. He had a major role in a lot of these films. And the Bamo Dr. Fives, one of my favorite from the 70s. Those of us old enough to remember watching Channel 11 saw this a lot when we were kids. It's been retold with a lot of without each person dying a bizarre, gruesome death. And I believe he talks through a talk box sort of thing, and has some Egyptian mythology baked into it too. Yeah, let's see. Twice Told Tales, based on Nathaniel Hawthorne's books. It's an anthology story. Some pretty good stuff. Sebastian Cabot's in this one. Richard Denning. One of Vincent Price's better films from the 60s. This film, the director and Vincent Price butted heads. He didn't want him going over to Michael Reeves was one of the very much darker, more serious Vincent Price than the over to the top 60s stuff he was doing. Pushed him hard. Vincent Price said later he didn't quite get what he was doing, but at the time, the famous quote is that Vincent Price told the director, who was in his 20s, I've made over 75 films. And he said, well, I've made 3 good ones. and then the final one we're going to go talk about a little bit, probably the prize of this group of films, is Roger Corman in the 60s did what's known as the Poe cycle. So he got in the rights to do, and they were on public domain. So he did a whole series of films that were part of Edgar Allan Poe stories, and actually some of the better ones from that time period. They started with The Fall of House of Usher. Again, most of these starred Vincent Price. And interestingly, Les Baxter did the music for quite a few of these. And Roger Corman was involved in. It was all kind of his baby. There were more Poe stories, but these were the best known ones. Then they did Pit and the Pendulum. Again, it said they were cranking out Poe stories. Cry the Banshee and Murder the Rue Morgue. Haunted Palace and Tower of London. The Premature Burial and the Mask of Red Death. Again, the Poe movies are well worth checking out. They definitely hold up better than a lot of them. And then Tales of Terror and Twice Told Tales. And these are from, there's actually a Vincent Price box they put out, which has got a documentary on him and his horror movies at the time. It's quite entertaining. And then The Tomb of LaGuardia, and the Poe, An Evening of Poe was actually, I believe, a TV special, and it's him standing in a dramatic space and actually doing poetic readings of Edgar Allan Poe. It's actually quite entertaining. I remember seeing it as a child. Still watch it every once in a while. And then 2 of my favorites here, Comedy of Terrors and The Raven. Comedy of Terrors is quite a great movie to watch around Halloween. You can watch it with the family. It's just kind of silly, and it has all Basil Rathbone, Boris Karloff, Vincent Price, and many other stars from that time period. Peter Lorre. Again, it's probably one of the better films. The Raven is also a nice film. They shot at England at Pinewood Studios, and they were able to utilize access to some really nice sets from some other films from that time period. And let's see. This has both of the Dr. Phibes films, so both quite entertaining, very shot in England, and kind of dark and fun. Theater of Blood and Madhouse. And that's about all I have of those films. They're all said it's a very, very interesting series and well worth checking out if you can. Said a lot of them been reissued on Blu-ray. I'm not going to go that route. There's about 9 different labels. Scream Factory, which is a sub-label of Shout Factory, started reissuing them. But I'm sticking with this. I probably have about 8 to 10 more to find, and I have the entire everything they put out in that series, and it's quite entertaining. I'll show you one other thing if you're just looking for Halloween stuff. This is a really nice box set that's been put out, and it's actually, I think, on sale on Amazon these days, fairly reasonable. And it has all 33 of the Universal Monsters films. A lot of commentaries. It's all on Blu-ray. It's been remastered really nicely. That's all I have tonight. Hope you find it interesting. I'll share a couple of trailers to some of these films in the comments when I'm done. And everyone stay safe. Have a good evening. Thanks for listening.